Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. I'm just talking about my experience at Disney World, which was magical to say the least. I cover the gist in part two, and of course, the most important factor, the Tron ride, in part one. So this, I just wanted to specify the other most important part of the trip because it was number one, Tron ride, top of my bucket list. But number two was Star Wars Land. I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan. I love all Star Wars because it's all Star Wars and I don't take any of it seriously. Okay, I take that back. There are two Star Wars things I've seen that I didn't think were very good, but I still enjoyed parts of them, and that would be Ahsoka and the Acolyte. But in general, spent my entire life growing up on Star Wars. My first movie in a theater was Return of the Jedi, albeit I was an infant at the time. It still counts. One of my greatest movie-going experiences of my life was in 1999, seeing Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, at that first showing, and taking my 3.5-year-old son to Episode 7, The Force Awakens. What an experience. And every Star Wars film after that, obviously. So to go to Disney World and get to experience this Star Wars land was quite something. So this was day two where we went to Hollywood Land. And as discussed in the previous video, we went to the Muppet Show and the Mickey Wild Railroad, whatever the heck, ride. Great time. But when we first got there, on our way to the Muppet Show, we see this AT-AT. Holy crap. And there was Star Tours, and there was like 5-10 minute wait. So we were like, hey, let's knock out Star Tours real quick. Now, having been to Disneyland when I was a kid, I have vivid memories of riding the original Star Tours there. So it was crazy to not only have the nostalgia, but now I've got my 12-year-old son, and Star Tours has been updated, obviously, including things from Ahsoka. So we went on Star Tours, and that was just amazing. Star Tours is so fantastic, and I was thrilled that because you get a random adventure. They have like 3 or however many different ones, but the one we got included the pod race, which was awesome. Episode 1 is my favorite Star Wars film. So to get to be in a pod race was exhilarating. And then it also had little snippets from Ahsoka. And we went on, yeah, that might have been the second one. Because the first, yeah, because we went on Star Tours and we got the pod race and this and that. And there was Ahsoka and stuff like that. It was great. Having 3PO there in your cockpit, it's so amazing. We loved Star Tours, so that was great. That blew all their minds. They had, but the people I was with had never ridden it. Obviously, my son. So that was great. And then we did those other 2 rides, and then we split up. And me and my son were like, okay, bye. We're gonna go to Star Wars Land. And we get to Star Wars Land, and right when you enter, there's like an X-wing there. And I'm like, okay, cool there. But then there's the entrance to Rise of the Resistance, and that was like the number 2 thing I wanted to experience after the light cycles. And there was only like a 25-30 minute wait. And I was like, you know what, son, let's just knock this out now since there's not much of a wait. It's like, okay. So we go in the line, and we notice a couple people get in line behind us, but then that was it. Nobody else was getting in line. I was like, okay, that's weird. And as I failed to mention in the Tron video, the night before we went to Disney World, I was looking at the app, and it said that the Tron ride was temporarily closed, and I was devastated. I was like, if I flew across the country to ride a light cycle and that ride's not even working, I mean, so there was like a good 12-hour period before I was actually riding a light cycle that I was worried we wouldn't get to. But I guess the newer rides consistently break down frequently throughout every day. So, spoiler alert, we did get to ride the light cycles, but we get in line for the Rise of Resistance, and people stop getting in line. So I'm checking the app, and it says ride temporarily closed, or whatever. How do they put it? Yeah, I think that's what it says, temporarily closed. So we're like, oh, here we go. So then they make an announcement, and they're like, hey, everybody, the ride's down. I found out this happened specifically with Rise of the Resistance, constantly throughout every single day, which, in retrospect, makes perfect sense, without getting ahead of myself here. They said, hey, you want to stick around? By all means, we have no idea how long it's going to be, or you can, come back later. I'm like, okay. I asked my son, hey, what do you want to do? He said, we'll wait it out. Because the queue is great. But see, the thing was, when we first entered Star Wars Land, you see an X-Wing, and then you see the entrance to Rise of the Resistance. And I was like, you know what? Let's ride Rise of the Resistance. And then when we exit Rise of the Resistance, because I knew that the exit point would be like in the middle of the park, that would be our big reveal to the opening grandeur of Star Wars Land. And I thought, that'd be cool. So we decided to wait, which, especially since you're inside, so we're like, well, at least we're in the nice cool shade and not out there in the freaking Florida heat. So we waited and we waited and we waited, and then eventually the line started moving again. We're like, all right. So we get into the thing, and first they shuffle you into this room where there's a hologram of Rey, like a legit hologram. It was blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh! And you look on the screen, there's Poe, there's Akbar. I discovered throughout the day that Star Wars Land in Star Wars timeline takes place after The Last Jedi, but before The Rise of Skywalker. So that's the timeline we're in, because they kept referring to Kylo Ren as Supreme Leader Ren. So I'm seeing this hologram of Rey. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then they take us into this ship. They're like, hey, welcome to the Resistance. We gotta get on the ship. We get on the ship. There's an animatronic of Akbar up there. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And we take off in this ship ride. Like, this whole ride is the second best ride I've ever been on in my life, behind Light Cycle Run, because hello. But the doors we went into this ship and then got taken by a Star Destroyer, those same doors open up. And we're on a Star Destroyer. What the heck? So we walk onto a Star Destroyer hangar bay, which was probably one of the, if not the coolest room I have ever been in my life. You see space out there with TIE fighters flying by. You've got real life TIE fighters in their docking things. You've got a bunch of stormtroopers chilling. We're like, this is amazing. And then we get in the holding cell thing, and this Imperial officer, she did a fantastic job. I love how these actors stay in character. She puts us in the holding cell. And we're like, all right. And we see this stormtrooper up there. And he's just, doing his thing. And he seemed like he was like glitchy or something. And I made a joke. I was like, oh, that's probably the stormtrooper that broke and why we were stuck in line for so long. And then we kept waiting. Because this is the point where Hux is supposed to show up, apparently. And nothing was happening. And then they opened the cell doors and said, sorry, folks, I'm going to need you to step out. The ride's down. It was a bummer. My son got what he wanted, because he wanted at one point during our visit to Disney World to have a, what did he call it? Dark exit? Or something? Whatever it was. He wanted to see behind the scenes of like when they make you get off a ride. So we got to see that. They said, they pretty much said, they had us wait for a couple minutes. They were like, all right, we're going to have to shuffle you all out. We're going to give you a fast pass to come back on this ride later. Cool. Scan your little thing. But we got to see behind the scenes. We got to go down these hallways and stuff for, cast members only. We got to see the inner workings and innards of some of the animatronics and that shuttle we were on that had Akbar. I was like, okay, well, this is cool. We're getting a glimpse at stuff we never would have seen otherwise. And they gave us our fast pass. So then my reveal to Star Wars Land was exiting out this place where people don't usually go and don't usually exit out, but it was still grand. So we're walking around Star Wars Land, and it's slightly underwhelming as a Star Wars fan. I wish they would have had like little areas from each movie, maybe, instead of just this huge spaceport from a planet that's never featured in the movies. But, whatever. It was cool. It was awesome. I got myself a Gold Leader lager. Gold Leader was one of my favorites as a kid, so I was like, I got to get a Gold Leader lager. The most expensive beer I've ever bought in my life. And I've bought a lot of beers at like sports events and concerts. But holy crap, this thing was 16 ounces, $16. $1 an ounce. That's insane. But I had to get at least one because it was gold leader lager. I wish I knew exactly what kind of beer it actually was because it was delicious. Anyway, my son was like, let's get some blue milk. And I was like, you can get blue milk, but if you want me to pay $15 for a drink, just know that you might not like it, and it's probably literally blue milk. So he decided against it. But anyway, so then we realized there was like no wait for the Falcon. I'm like, all right, let's ride the Falcon. I am not a huge fan of the Millennium Falcon. There are plenty of Star Wars ships that I love. But I was never like, the Millennium Falcon's cool and all, but it's not like, oh, right, the Millennium Falcon. Like, I could care less. It's the Falcon. Great. Whatever. Boy, did that change. So the queue for the Falcon is amazing. We're plowing through it. You get to see Yondu, that great animatronic. You get BB-8, all that stuff. BB-8 was in the other queue for Rise. Because the cool thing about Rise of the Resistance is half the ride is the queue. And the queue is half the ride. It's cool. Although we didn't get, because we got kicked off before that even really kicked into gear. So we get on the Millennium Falcon and we go on to into the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, this is so surreal. And, the people are like, okay, you stand here, you stand there, you stand there. Because we were a group of 6. It was 3 groups of 2. And the people behind us, because we were in front, and the people behind us go, because I had no idea what was going on. I've never done this. And the people behind us go, are you guys cool to fly? And I'm like, what? Like, you're in the front. You're cool to fly? We've flown before. You good to fly? I'm like, yeah. So then they were going to be the gunners, and then the people in the back are the engineers or something. Anyway. So we were fortunate enough to pilot the Millennium Falcon. I was the pilot, and my 12-year-old son was the co-pilot. And boy, was that ride amazing. Oh my gosh, it was such a blast. Like, you're literally flying the Millennium Falcon. And we were literally flying the Millennium Falcon. To be in that cockpit, at the controls, oh, I couldn't believe it. At one point, they had Flynn, my son, go into hyperdrive, and he got to go into hyperdrive. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. So I'm flying, we're having a great time. We weren't the best pilots in the world. I think the people that were with us weren't too thrilled. But it was still just amazing. And then the second time, near the end, we had to go back into hyperspace. And my son hesitated for just a moment. And I was like, nope. And I reached over and I grabbed the thing to go into hyperspace. And I told him after the fact, I was like, sorry, dude, but I needed to go into hyperspace once, As much as I would love the opportunity that I didn't think of in the time to be like, punch it, Chewie, but I had to push that thing. So I got to go into hyperspace too. So both my son and I got to put the Millennium Falcon into hyperdrive. Oh, it was so amazing. So then that ride was over, and we're like, okay, this is great. We explored the park for a while, but we were keeping an eye on Rise of the Resistance. And this is about the point where the group we were with that we had split up from were like, well, it's too hot out. We're going to leave. Who goes to Disney World and then leaves early? Heck no. But I was like, look, we ain't leaving without the Rise of Resistance. I don't care if it takes all day. We need to ride that ride. And about that time, because I'm checking the app. This app is amazing, by the way. It'll tell you how long the wait is, when rides are closed, when rides are open. Very convenient. All of a sudden, we see that it's open. Sweet. So we hustle over there in frickin' 100-degree heat. Bad idea. We hustle over there. We finally get to the line again, and they're like, sorry, folks. It's closed. It was open for like 2 minutes, but it broke down again. I'm like, man, our luck. So we go on the thing. We ended up riding the Millennium Falcon again. And this time we were the engineers. So we're pressing buttons, but we're trying to do such a good job that we can't really pay attention to what's going on the screen, if you will. But the ride lasted longer that time. We had more of an experience, which proved to me, oh, the better pilot you are, the longer the journey is. So those people must not have been thrilled with my piloting skills, but I was glad that we had good pilots because we had a longer ride that time. It was a blast. So riding the Millennium Falcon again, that was great. Oh, what an experience. But at one point, we got to see the dramatic exit of Kylo Ren out of his shuttle. That was wicked. My son started talking smack to stormtroopers. I was like, all hail the First Order. And Kylo Ren walked right up to me and my son and said, step aside. So that was wicked, to have Kylo Ren tell us to step aside. That was cool. At one point, We got to see Chewie and Rey, but then Chewie like took off. He was like, it's way too hot out here for this. So he took off, but then Rey, we were very patient because she was being such a sweetheart. That actress who plays Rey is phenomenal. And she was such a sweetheart to this little boy. And just, he kept talking and talking and talking, and she was being very patient with him. And my son was being very patient because he just wanted to give her a high five. And he was like, oh, hey, Rey. So he got to meet Rey. That was amazing. We got to check out all the cool stuff. And then he wanted to build a droid, which I promised him if he rode to the Haunted Mansion, which he loved, the night before. So we were planning on getting a droid, and we just wanted to ride Rise of the Resistance. And our party's like, okay, well, meet us up front. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to build a droid. And they're like, all right, well, we'll wait. And right then, is like, we weren't going to have another chance. The Rise of the Resistance opened up again. So we hustle over there. When we get there, it's open. Thank God. We use our fast pass, which takes us immediately to the part where they put you in the room with the Rey hologram. So we got to see the Rey hologram in BB-8 again. We got to fly in the thing with Akbar again. We got to go in the Star Destroyer hangar bay again. Oh. And then we went into our cell again. But this time, General Hux actually came out and blah, blah, blah this. And Kylo Ren comes out and blah, blah, blah. We're like, okay. So for the rest of the ride, it was 1,000 times more exhilarating because the entirety of the ride going on through my mind was, holy crap, we need to hurry this up because it could break down at any second, which just added so much to the tension and the excitement and the urgency of being prisoners and having to escape. So next thing we know, the freaking thing starts opening up in the wall. And then the wall opens up. I was like, what the heck? I never would have guessed that there was a freaking door there. But they're like, somebody cut through the wall and it opened up the wall. And it was the Resistance. And they were like, we're here to rescue you. Come on, let's go. And we're like, all right. So we hustle into these little cars and we got this cool little R2 unit because we were in the front of our car. We got this cool little R2 unit driving. Next thing we know, we're moving around. And it's like, oh no, we have to escape the Star Destroyer. And there's stormtroopers shooting at us, and you see the laser bolts going by, and you see them like blowing up stuff on the walls, and chunks coming out of everywhere. We're like, whoa! And we're doing this, and there's Kylo Ren. We're like, oh my gosh! And there's Kylo Ren, animatron, and then he puts his lightsaber through the ceiling. He's like, he's trying to open it up, and we were in the front, so we were like, right there. There's this lightsaber in our face. We're like, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. We come through the thing. We're like, oh, and then it takes us around, and we go through all these ATs and stuff. And then people just keep shooting at us. And then we finally get to Kylo Ren, and he's like, oh, trying to use the Force. But then, like, the Star Destroyer's under attack. And then a huge hole blows in the hull. And then, like, all the everything starts sucking out of the Star Destroyer because there's a hole in the thing. And we feel this wind, like actual wind, like coming from behind us. And we're like, oh my gosh, we gotta get out of here. And Kylo Ren's trying to use the Force, and he's using the Force to not get sucked out into space. And we were trying not to get sucked out into space. And then we go into, like, this thing, because these are, like, individual cars that aren't on a track. Next thing I know, our car goes into, like, an elevator thing, and we're like riding an elevator in a car, so we're like on a ride, and then all of a sudden we drop. It was like, whoa, it was so exhilarating. We dropped. It was like the Tower of Terror or something. Only we were on a Star Destroyer, and then we dropped, and then we escaped, and then we're like flying through space, and then we get back on the other ship. Oh, and we made it, and we escaped Kylo Ren's clutches, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. That is the second best ride I've ever been on. It was like worth the wait, and the fact that we had so much trouble of barely getting on this ride before we had to leave. Oh, I was so thankful. It just added so much to the experience. It was amazing. And then I kept my son's promise, and we went to the little droid building station, and he built his own little droid. Let me show you. This is Greg. My son named him GR36. Or 39, GR39, something like that. Calls him Greg. He's a genius, but he's a great droid. He has a lot of personality. This is not just a remote control toy. It is an animatronic with smart tech that has actual personality, and when you talk to him, he will respond appropriately. He cusses a lot. Anyway, so that was such an exhilarating experience, getting to watch my son build his own droid from scratch. He picked the parts, he put it together himself, and he just loves playing with that thing. That was the greatest purchase I could have possibly made. So we're on our way out. We're like, yeah, we'll be right there. We'll meet you at the front. And as we're leaving, we see that Star Tours only has a 5-minute wait. So we were like, let's just ride that real quick. They don't need to know that, it's a big park. It'll take us a while to get to the front. So we rode Star Tours one more time, and this time we got to go on Kashyyyk and stuff, and it was great. We had an amazing time at Disney World, and Star Wars Land is an amazing experience. And the Millennium Falcon, I'm a huge fan of that ship now. I'm literally right now in the middle of building my very first ever Millennium Falcon Lego set. So yeah, now I have a personal attachment to the Millennium Falcon, and Rise of the Resistance is one of the best rides I've ever ridden in my life. I highly recommend it. It was an amazing trip, and I would love to go to Disney World again sometime and experience so much more that we didn't get to, but the things we did get to experience, I'm so thankful for. I mean, I was wearing this shirt, and when we were leaving on the Rise of the Resistance, all of the Resistance fighters kept making comments, and one of them was like, I don't like the ominous nature of your shirt. I'm like, well, he's going to return somehow. He will. You'll see. Because this is right before Rise of Skywalker in the timeline. But yeah, greatest experience of my life, that trip. To experience all those things with my 12-year-old son and bring out my inner 12-year-old. Dream come true. Miracles do happen. Okie dokie.